Before I start the list, I'm going to do a quick preface discussing the Oscars more broadly. If you are not interested in this and just want to see the list, then please skip forward to the timecode on your screen now. Do the Oscars matter? Kinda. First things first. It's important to clarify that the Academy's Best Picture award, or in fact any of its best other awards, is not an indication of the best of, well, anything. There are so many rules and criteria. Most movies that come out in any given year are by their very existence eligible for consideration, let alone nomination. The second major reason is the hugely expensive For Your Consideration campaigns that studios use to promote their movies. This all but excludes any truly independent films and means that smaller studios, such as A24, have to choose just one film to prioritise for awards season, even when they have movies worthy of nomination in a plethora of different categories. The Oscars are not a meritocracy, and therefore cannot be any true indication of the best of anything filmmaking wise. So if they don't give awards to the best movies, then why do they matter at all? Well, 1. Their importance is only down to the public appeal. People like seeing famous people get dressed up and give speeches. As long as there is a public demand, the Oscars shall remain relevant. And therefore, by extension, the Oscars equals money. There is a reason the studios are willing to pump millions and millions into awards season. If your Best Picture winning movie is still in theatres, which they usually are, huge numbers of people will come and see your film. And if it isn't, then you get to slap Academy Award winner in massive text on the DVD box. But there is a less cynical reason. Because the recognition that an Oscar win gives a director, a writer or an actor, it gives them more creative freedom. Because of the increased financial security for their future projects, it means studios are more likely to fund projects that, without an Oscar winner, they might not. So, the Oscars do matter. Kind of. If you're interested in this topic, I would highly recommend Renegade Cuts' Do the Oscars Matter video, where he looks at this in much greater depth. But for now, let's get on with the list. Because these are all well-known movies, I won't go into any great detail in the plot. It's more of a high-level summary and the reason for my ranking. As you all know if you watched my previous video, 2018 is one of my favourite years of all time for movies, with tons upon tons of really fantastic films. And yet somehow, the Best Picture went to this piece of crap. Not only is it boring, but its subject matter is genuinely insulting. The Academy are keen to show how far they've come with regards to racism and diversity on screen. But for me, Green Book is an enormous step back. Not only is it an accurate representation of Dr. Don Shirley, but one that completely misunderstands the key issues regarding race. Many members of the Doctor's family have denounced the film, including this scathing call-in on radio station 1A Movie Club.
My name is Carol Shirley Kimball. I am the niece of Don Shirley, supposedly the subject of the movie The Green Book. It's once again a depiction of a white man's version of a black man's life, and to depict him and to take away from him and make the story about a hero of a white man for this incredibly accomplished black man is insulting at best.
I don't think it is controversial at all to call this a white saviour film, and it is by far the worst Best Picture winner from the last decade, perhaps even the last 2 or 3. This movie is so forgettable that, despite the fact I rewatched it yesterday in preparation for this video, I've already forgotten it. That being said, it's not bad, it's just okay. The directing is fine, the acting is fine, the cinematography is fine, the story is fine. The only thing more forgettable than the story is the soundtrack. I don't remember a single song that was used, but I remember thinking that the songs were played way too frequently and often didn't fit the scene at all. This is just another cliché American based on a true story thriller. Oh look, another movie based on a true story. You're seeing a pattern here. I have this higher than Argo because it was at least a bit more interesting, but in all honesty, these two are more or less interchangeable. To be fair, I do think the story of Spotlight is kind of important, but everything else about this movie is just meh. It does have one of the best out-of-context trailer lines though, so that's something I guess.
Spotlight.
The first movie on this list I actually really like. Moonlight is a truly beautiful and moving story about a gay man as he grows from a boy to an adult. Beyond the cinematography and the great writing, one aspect of this film I find uniquely impressive is the casting and direction for all three versions of both the main character and Kevin. I never for a second doubted that the different actors weren't just older versions of the same character. Everything from the way they move and speak, all the way down to their mannerisms was exactly spot on. For me, it is a little slow, but you are experiencing a character's entire life from boy to man, so perhaps that's appropriate. I think the most impressive thing about The King's Speech is that, for a movie which is entirely comprised of people in rooms talking to each other, how visually interesting and creative it is. A story about a British royal who must balance duties of power and overcome personal problems with the assistance of a commoner is practically Oscar bait incarnate. A formula we had all seen before 2010 with the likes of the Queen and Mrs. Brown, and since with the likes of Victoria and Abdul, amongst others. But you know what? In The King's Speech, it just works. Colin Firth and Geoffrey Rush are both brilliant. The story is extremely well executed, with a wonderfully bittersweet ending as he triumphs over his impediment to announce the start of what would become the most terrible war in the history of man. A true gem of a film about a silent movie star whose career is abruptly ended by the dawn of a new movie phenomenon, the talkies. The acting, directing, production design, the wonderful score, everything comes together brilliantly to deliver a film that is not only true to the silent movie era from which it draws inspiration, but is itself a fantastic silent film, one that I'm sure even audiences unfamiliar with films pre-1930 would love. A remarkable achievement in filmmaking. The only movie on this list with a woman as the main character. Fucking Hollywood. The Shape of Water is a fairy tale in a very similar vein to that of Del Toro's 2006 film Pan's Labyrinth. The green colour palette, the score, the incredible creature design and effects give this movie a dreamlike feel, which is contrasted by the spy, military, facility elements. One of the key criticisms I see of this film is that the general being too over the top and cliche, but I think this element of the movie is great. All the Soviet spy stuff and the stereotype military characters give the film this camp 80s B-movie feel, which I think fits this heightened fairy tale reality so brilliantly. What an incredible film. And it is so desperately sad that without this movie winning Best Picture, it probably wouldn't have even gotten a wide release in the UK. But thankfully it did, and it has swung the door wide open for Korean cinema in the West. The film is a glimpse of class warfare in modern Korea, although it's easy to apply the same metaphors elsewhere in the world.
이야, 이거 진짜 상징적인 거네.
As a film, Parasite has all the key signifiers of Korean new wave cinema. The blend of the very dark themes and comedy, the brilliantly written characters, and the socio-economic commentary for which Bong Joon-ho is particularly well known. For someone wanting to get into Korean cinema, Parasite is surely the best place to start. My picks for first and second are more or less interchangeable for me. They're both unquestionably masterpieces, however, as I've started with this format, I might as well stick to it. 12 Years a Slave is an adaptation of the memoirs of the same name, published in 1853, written by a man called Solomon Northup. The story follows Solomon as he is kidnapped away from his family and his free life in the north of the US and sold into slavery in the south. This film is storytelling at its very best. Incredible performances, fantastically well written characters, and holy shit does it look beautiful. The beauty in the cinematography expertly juxtaposing the horrific, often hard to watch violence that the characters endure. What director Steve McQueen has done with this film is create an artistic masterpiece that simultaneously appeals to mainstream cinema goers, the proverbial holy grail of filmmaking. Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance, is about a washed-up Hollywood actor trying to reinvent himself as a mature theatre performer as he writes, directs and stars in his first Broadway play. I spent a lot of my pre-university years in the theatre, and acting on stage is something I still really love. To be honest, it may well be this personal connection that's pipped Birdman to the #1 spot on this list. Thematically, there is so much to unpack that I'm not even going to attempt it here. But the film manages to do this without it ever feeling cluttered or forced. The cast across the board are phenomenal. Even actors who only have 1 or 2 lines are flawless. In my opinion, this is by far and away Michael Keaton's best performance, and a very brave one at that. This is a perfectly cast film, which not only results in pitch-perfect performances, but even on this strange meta level, the actual actors' careers almost perfectly fit the characters and the themes of the movie itself. It's almost baffling to me that this movie even got made. It's like one of these crazy ideas that you might have in the shower, but someone actually made it and it turned out amazing. You may have noticed at this point I haven't even mentioned the crowning jewel of this film, the aspect that elevates it from being an amazing movie to what I would consider to be one of the best movies of the decade, and that is, of course, the cinematography. For those of you who don't know, the film is shot in a series of long takes that are seamlessly edited together to give the impression of one continuous shot. And as impressive as this technique is in other films, such as 1917, where Birdman differs is twofold. One, I could not for the life of me identify where more than maybe 1 or 2 of the cuts were in Birdman. Unlike 1917, where on my first and only watch I spotted at least 6 or 7, despite not looking for them, and when I did spot them, it completely took me out of the film. The second reason is that this technique fits the themes of this film down to a T, and elevates the movie, rather than being a gimmick that detracts from it. I'm more than likely going to touch on this movie further in the future, but for now, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.
Spotlight, 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 spotlight.